Harley Zimmerman had never felt more ridiculous in her life than the moment she stood alone in Studio Room B, clutching her water bottle like it might save her from the social embarrassment of showing up to a couple's dance class. Solo. She inhaled, trying to steady herself as she glanced around the glossy floor. The mirrors lining the wall did not lie. She was the only one without a partner. She looked down at her faded sneakers and then at the sign taped to the door again, Ballroom Basics Beginner Partner Class. I should just leave, she muttered under her breath, turning toward the door. Are you Harley? A deep voice asked behind her. She whipped around and nearly dropped her bottle. A man tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair brushing just over his ears and sharp blue eyes stood in front of her, wearing a black button-up rolled at the sleeves and dark jeans that looked a bit too expensive for a dance class. Yeah. That's me, she said slowly, unsure how he knew her name. He held out a hand. I'm Roman. Roman North. I called earlier. They said someone dropped out last minute and there was a solo dancer. His smile was easy, like he was used to walking into rooms and immediately taking command of them. Figured I'd fill in. She blinked. You want to take a beginner ballroom class? With a stranger? His grin widened. Why not? Harley hesitated, her guard still up. You dance. Only when I'm trying to impress someone, he said, then added with a wink, so you're safe. I'll be terrible. She laughed before she could stop herself. Fine. But if you step on my foot, you're buying me new shoes. Deal. The instructor clapped her hands and called everyone to the center. Harley wasn't sure what she'd expected, maybe someone awkward, maybe an older man who'd retired and taken up dance as a hobby. Not this. Not a man who looked like he walked out of a magazine and into her Tuesday night. As they took their place in the circle, Roman gently placed a hand on her waist and something she hadn't expected flicked through her warmth. He was tall, definitely over 6 feet, and moved with the kind of casual confidence that made her feel like she'd known him longer than 5 minutes. So, Harley, he said as they began their first basic step. What made you sign up for this? She exhaled through a laugh. I lost a bet. He raised an eyebrow. Really? Yup. My best friend dared me to do something that pushed me way out of my comfort zone. I'm a graphic designer. I don't exactly do people. Then you're already winning, he said. She glanced up at him. What about you? Why are you here? Roman paused slightly before answering. I needed a distraction. And I thought dancing might be different. Something about the way he said it made her curious, but there wasn't time to ask anything else. The instructor had them switching moves, pulling them closer. He was surprisingly good for someone who claimed to be terrible. His hand rested just under her shoulder blade, and every time she looked up, he was already looking at her. By the end of the hour, Harley's face hurt from smiling. As they walked out together into the cool night air, Roman asked, You walking or driving? I took the train, she said, hugging her jacket around her. Let me give you a ride. She hesitated. I get it, he said quickly, raising his hands. But I swear I'm not a creep. I'll give you the front seat, no weird music, and I won't even ask for your number. Harley narrowed her eyes. That's a lot of promises. It's also freezing, he said, nodding toward the cloudy sky. She sighed. Fine. But if you have a clown mask in your trunk, I'm jumping out. Roman laughed as they walked toward the parking lot. What she expected was maybe a used sedan or a clean SUV. What she did not expect was the sleek black car parked under the streetlight, a Bentley shining like it had its own spotlight. You're kidding, she blurted. Roman glanced back. Something wrong. You drive a Bentley. To dance class? He shrugged. It's just a car. It's a Bentley. I like comfortable seats. Harley folded her arms and stared at him. What do you do, exactly? He opened the passenger door for her. Let's just say I own a few things. That answer didn't sit right with her. She didn't like vague. But her toes were cold and the car smelled like warm leather and pine when she slipped inside. The drive was quiet at first. Then Roman turned to her at a red light. You're really good, by the way. At dancing, she laughed. I tripped over myself twice. You're still better than half the people in there. Thanks, she said, then looked at him. Seriously, though, what do you actually do? He tilted his head. You want the PR answer or the real one? The real one. I build hotels. Renovate them. Some resorts. Some real estate. I run a few companies under North Enterprises. She blinked. Wait, North Enterprises? As in, the company that bought that luxury tower downtown. Roman chuckled. Yeah, that was us. You're that North. I guess so. Suddenly, the Bentley made a lot more sense. Roman pulled up near her apartment building, a modest walk-up in a quiet neighborhood. He parked without comment. You really didn't need to do this, she said. I wanted to. She looked at him, unsure what to say. He didn't seem to be flirting. He didn't even seem to be trying to impress her. He just was. Before she could open the door, he leaned slightly toward her. Same time next week? Her heart stuttered. You want to come back? I don't usually do repeats, he said, a playful glint in his eyes. But you're different. Harley smiled, then opened the door. Next week. As she walked up the steps to her building, she glanced back once. He was still there, waiting. And when their eyes met, he gave her the kind of quiet, steady look that stuck with her long after she shut her door. She came to dance alone. She hadn't expected to meet a millionaire. And she definitely hadn't expected to want to see him again. The next Tuesday, Harley stood in the studio lobby staring at the mirrored wall, pretending to scroll through her phone while her heart beat faster than it had in days. Roman wasn't there yet. She wasn't sure why the pit in her stomach deepened with every passing minute. She told herself all week not to build expectations. Men like Roman didn't follow through. He was probably out hosting a gala somewhere or flying to another continent for some billion-dollar deal. But when the door swung open and he walked in wearing a deep navy blazer over a black tee and looking like he belonged on the cover of a travel magazine, Harley's breath caught. You came, she said before she could stop herself. Roman gave her a sideways glance as he walked to her. Didn't think I would? She straightened her shoulders. I wasn't sure people like you kept appointments that didn't involve contracts. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. You're not a contract, Harley. You're a promise I wanted to keep. Before she could respond, the instructor called the class to attention. This time, Roman didn't hesitate. He took her hand and led her to the center, his touch gentle but deliberate. As they moved through the first steps, Harley noticed something had shifted. He was more focused tonight, less playful, more dialed into every beat, every turn. His hand at her waist was steady. His gaze locked on hers with a quiet intensity that made it hard to breathe. Did you practice? She asked, trying to defuse the heat rising in her cheeks. Maybe a little, Roman replied. I have a reputation to uphold. You're a hotel tycoon, not a ballroom champion. His lips twitched in amusement. That doesn't mean I want to look like I've got 2 left feet in front of you. She glanced away quickly. Compliments were easy to dismiss when they came from strangers. But coming from him, they felt weighted, grounded in something more than charm. After class, they didn't speak at first as they walked through the quiet city blocks toward the parking lot. The air was crisp, the sky just dark enough for the streetlights to flicker on. Have dinner with me, Roman said suddenly. Harley stopped walking. Now? He shrugged. I know a place. It's late enough that we'll have privacy. I didn't bring anything to change into. You look fine. She hesitated. You mean I don't look like I just danced for an hour and sweated through my tank top? Roman stepped closer. You look like the only person I want to spend the rest of my evening with. Harley blinked. You really say things like that, don't you? I only say what I mean. She followed him to the car. The restaurant he took her to didn't have a sign. It was tucked down a narrow cobblestone alley just off the main road behind a black iron gate. The hostess greeted Roman like he owned the place, and within minutes they were tucked into a private booth near a wall of glass that overlooked the river. The table was already set. Crystal glasses, gold-rimmed plates, candlelight flickering off the dark wood. Harley stared at the view and whispered, This is. I know, Roman said, watching her. It's my favorite table. Do you bring all your dance partners here? He leaned forward. No one's ever made it past the lobby. She rolled her eyes, but her smile betrayed her. As the waiter poured wine, she looked out the window again, trying to calm the nerves skittering through her chest. So what's the real story? She asked once the waiter stepped away. You're clearly not just a guy who builds hotels. There's more. Roman's expression shifted just slightly. There's always more, Harley. That doesn't mean it's worth sharing. She tilted her head. I think it is. He studied her for a long moment. My father built the company from nothing. I inherited it when I was 25. I expanded it. Fast. Too fast. I made deals I didn't always understand, trusted people I shouldn't have. Spent years pretending I cared about numbers more than people. And now I'm trying to undo some of the damage. Quietly. Without headlines. Harley's voice softened. You don't seem like someone who hides. I don't hide. I deflect. That's not the same as healing. Roman looked at her, and something in his eyes, something raw, made her pulse skip. I thought tonight would be about dinner, he said quietly. I didn't expect therapy. I'm not trying to fix you. I know. He leaned back. That might be why I wanted to bring you here. They ate slowly. The food was rich, but Harley barely tasted it. She was too busy watching him, the way he listened, the way he paused before answering like he wasn't used to being asked real questions. When dessert arrived, some delicate creation with caramel and toasted almonds, Roman pushed his plate toward her. I don't eat sugar after 8, he said. Harley raised an eyebrow. Why? Discipline. She picked up her fork. That sounds exhausting. It is. After the meal, he didn't rush her. They sat in silence for a while, just watching the river move outside the window. It was the kind of quiet that didn't demand filling. Outside, he opened the car door for her again, and this time, when she slid inside, it felt natural. Next week? He asked as he pulled away from the curb. You're serious about this dancing thing? I'm serious about you. Harley turned to look at him. You don't even know me. I know you didn't run when you found out who I was. I know you challenged me more than anyone has in years. And I know that dancing with you feels like the first thing in a long time that's actually fun. She folded her arms. That's a lot to take from 2 nights. Roman's voice was quiet. Maybe I'm a fast learner. When he dropped her off, she stood on the sidewalk and looked up at him through the open window. Thank you, she said. For what? For not being who I expected. Roman rested his elbow on the window frame. Then let me keep surprising you. Harley turned to walk inside, but something stopped her. She looked back. His car hadn't moved. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was walking away from something. She felt like she was walking toward it. Harley arrived early the following week, stepping into the studio with her heart already racing. The lights overhead cast a soft glow on the polished floor, and the faint sound of Latin music floated from another room. She tightened her ponytail, trying to ignore the way her fingers trembled slightly. She hadn't seen Roman since their dinner, though he'd left her with a quiet look before driving off, one that had replayed in her head more times than she cared to admit. She hadn't expected to miss him. But she had. Fiercely. When the door clicked open behind her, she turned, expecting him. It wasn't him. An older couple walked in, laughing softly, and Harley forced herself to look away, pretending to study her reflection in the wall of mirrors. Minutes passed. More people arrived. No Roman. She tried not to feel foolish for waiting. The instructor called them to formation. Harley moved to her usual place but stayed near the back, hoping maybe he'd still show. He didn't. The music started. Her replacement partner, an enthusiastic man in his 60s with a penchant for humming along to the rhythm, stepped into place. Harley smiled politely and danced, but her body moved without feeling. Her mind was somewhere else. Somewhere in a dark booth with a river view and a voice that had felt like gravity. After class, she didn't linger. She exited quickly, her bag slung over her shoulder, the sidewalk buzzing with post-rain humidity. Her apartment was only 6 blocks away, and she needed the walk, needed the air to soothe the sting building behind her ribs. She turned the corner and stopped short. Roman's car was parked across the street. He was leaning against the driver's door, arms folded across his chest, watching her like he'd been waiting all night. I'm sorry, he said before she could speak. She crossed the street slowly. You didn't come. I got pulled into something I couldn't reschedule. I thought I'd make it in time. I didn't. His voice was rougher than usual, like he hadn't slept. You could have warned me. I didn't have a second to breathe, let alone call. I was in a meeting that got ugly fast. One of the properties. He stopped himself. You don't need the details. I don't need excuses either, she said. He stepped forward. You're right. But I didn't want to end tonight without seeing you. Harley kept her arms crossed. You think showing up outside my dance class fixes it? No. I think it proves I didn't forget. That it mattered to me. She looked up at him. Why are you even doing this? You could have anyone. I don't want anyone. That stopped her. Roman inhaled like he was about to say something else, then ran a hand through his hair and looked away. There's a conference in Lake Como next week. I'm flying out tomorrow morning. I'll be gone 5 days. She blinked. Okay. I want you to come with me. Harley's laugh was short. You're serious? Completely. You want me to drop everything and fly across the world with a man I've danced with twice? No. I want you to come with me because every hour I spend away from you, I realize how rare this is. I haven't felt anything real in years, Harley. And you ask questions no one dares to. You look at me like I'm not a headline. I don't want to lose that. She shook her head, overwhelmed. I can't just leave. I have clients, projects, a life here. You'd be back by Monday. I'll make sure you have Wi-Fi, space, anything you need to work if you have to. That's not the point. Then what is? Harley searched his face. I don't know you, Roman. Not really. You're this polished, impossible man who drives a Bentley and owns an empire and waltzes into my life like you've decided I'm yours. I haven't decided anything, he said quietly. I'm asking you to decide with me. She looked down at her shoes, her breath catching. You don't even know what kind of toothpaste I use. I know you draw when you're thinking. That you don't like being interrupted. That you hate small talk but love quiet. I know you notice everything like the waitress who was limping at that restaurant. You saw it before anyone else did. You offered to carry her tray. Her throat tightened. And I know that if I don't ask you now, I'll always wonder what could have happened if I had. She didn't answer. Roman stepped closer, gently brushing a loose strand of hair from her forehead. You don't have to say yes. But if you want to know who I really am, you have to see the world I live in. She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. You'll have a return ticket ready? I'll have two. Harley closed her eyes for a second. Everything inside her screamed that this was insane. But there was something in the way he stood there, not pleading, not demanding. Just waiting. Like he meant it. She opened her eyes. Pick me up at 8. Roman exhaled. A slow smile spreading across his face. Pack light. It's warm in Como. She turned and walked toward her building, heart pounding. She didn't look back. She didn't have to. The next morning, a black car was waiting outside her door at exactly 8 o'clock. When she stepped inside, Roman was already there, dressed casually in a white button-up and dark slacks, a carry-on bag at his feet. He reached for her hand without a word. As the car pulled away from the curb, Harley felt the familiar buildings of her neighborhood disappear behind her. She didn't know what waited for her across the ocean. But she knew one thing. She wasn't dancing alone anymore. The villa overlooked the lake like it had been carved into the hillside by the gods themselves, stone arches, cascading terraces, and windows that caught the gold of the setting sun like they'd been made to worship it. Harley stood at the edge of the balcony, fingers curled around the iron railing, her eyes tracing the way the water shimmered below. Behind her, French doors opened with a soft click. I thought I lost you, Roman said, his voice quieter than usual. She didn't turn. I needed a second. I figured. The breeze tugged at her hair as she finally glanced back. Roman had changed into a pale shirt with the sleeves rolled, his collar open, a drink in his hand he hadn't touched. He looked out of place in the quiet, like the world didn't know what to do with him when he wasn't in motion. You brought me here, and I haven't even asked you why, Harley said. He leaned against the doorframe. Because I wanted to see what happened when we weren't counting hours. She turned fully toward him. And? I think I like it too much. They stared at each other across the space between them, the silence not sharp, but full. Finally, she said, you seem different here. Roman stepped forward slowly. You noticed. You're not dodging questions. You're not hiding behind charm. I don't need to. He stopped a few feet from her. I'm not usually allowed to be this version of myself. Harley studied him. What changed? You walked into that studio. She lowered her gaze. You don't even know where I went to school. I know you overthink everything. That you won't let anyone in unless they prove they're not just passing through. I know you're terrified of being someone's side project. Her head snapped up at that. He was right. She hadn't said it, but he'd seen it anyway. You don't just see people, she said. You dissect them. I've had to. In my world, trust is a liability. So what is this then? She asked. Are you letting me in or just testing the walls? I haven't let anyone get this close in years, Harley. If that's not real, I don't know what is. She stepped back, folding her arms. Then why do I feel like you're still holding something back? Roman hesitated. She waited. There's a board vote next week, he said finally. My CFO and 2 directors are pushing for a hostile split. They want to break North Enterprises into pieces and sell off the assets. It's about power, not profit. Her stomach dropped. And you brought me into this storm? I didn't bring you into anything. You walked beside me. There's a difference. Why tell me now? Because if I lose the vote, I lose control. And if that happens, I won't be able to protect what I've built. Or the people I've brought into it. Harley stepped closer. You think I need protecting? I think if this goes south, I'll be swallowed up in lawyers and press and chaos. And I don't want you caught in the fallout. She stared at him. So this is your goodbye? No, he said instantly. This is me being honest. For once. She looked out at the lake again. Why can't it just be simple? Because I'm not simple. And neither are you. She exhaled. Then tell me what you want. Roman moved to stand beside her, his voice low. I want to wake up and know you're somewhere in the same house. I want to build things that matter, and I want you next to me when I do. I want to know that when I walk back into that boardroom, I'm not doing it for a number on a spreadsheet, but for something real. Harley looked at him. And if I say yes? Then I'll fight like hell to make sure this doesn't break us. She swallowed. And if you lose? He reached for her hand. Then I'll start over. With you. That night, they didn't talk about business. Or dancing. Or what waited for them back in New York. They stayed on the balcony until the stars silenced everything else. Roman told her about the first hotel he built on Adair, the time he slept in a half-finished lobby during a storm, how the first time he ever saw his name on a building, it didn't feel like a victory, it felt like a warning. Harley told him about her mother's quiet strength, her father's absence, the way success sometimes felt like a betrayal of the ordinary life she was supposed to live. She talked about the time she won a design award and couldn't tell anyone because she didn't want her coworkers to think she was showing off. They didn't touch much that night. Just fingers brushing across the armrest of a chair, knees barely aligned under a blanket. It was enough. The next morning they flew back. Harley expected distance. Instead, Roman held her hand the entire ride from the tarmac, thumb tracing gentle circles against her palm. When he dropped her off outside her apartment, he didn't say much. Just, I'll call you after the vote. She nodded, heart tight in her chest. 3 days passed. Then 5. Nothing. Harley tried not to check the news. She failed. On the 6th day, she stood in front of the studio again, unsure why she'd come. The room was empty. No class tonight. Just silence and mirrors. She turned to leave. Dance with me. She froze. Roman stood in the doorway, no blazer, no armor. Just him. She walked toward him slowly. You're supposed to be fighting for your company. I did. This morning. Her breath caught. And? I won. She blinked. You came straight here? I needed to see the only person who reminded me what I was fighting for. They walked into the center of the floor. No music. No steps. Just them. Roman reached for her hand. I couldn't promise you peace, Harley. But I can promise you loyalty. She looked up at him, eyes burning. I don't need peace. I just need real. He pulled her into his arms. Then stay. She nodded. Only if you lead? He smiled. Not the public one. Not the charming one. The real one. And then, without music, without an audience, they danced. No missteps. No fear. Just 2 people who'd walked in alone and found something they never expected. Love? Harley stood barefoot on the rooftop of Roman's penthouse, the city glittering behind her like 1,000 tiny promises. The last of the guests had left hours ago, the catered dinner had been packed away, and the string lights still swayed gently above them, casting soft golden rings across the stone floor. Roman stepped out from the open glass doors behind her, his tie gone, shirt sleeves rolled. He held 2 glasses of wine, offering her one without a word. She took it, their fingers brushing. "I didn't expect this," she said, glancing up at the subtle arch of twinkling lights he'd had strung across the rooftop. "You hosted a dinner for your board on your own balcony." "I wanted them to see where I make real decisions," he said. "And I wanted you here when I did." "They respected you tonight," she said. "Even the ones who looked ready to mutiny last week. I gave them something they'd forgotten existed in this business. Transparency." Harley took a sip of the wine. It was drier than she usually liked, but it felt right in her hand. "You didn't have to include me. I'm not part of your empire." "You are," Roman said simply, moving beside her. "You're the only part that makes all of it feel like it's mine and not just something I'm trying to outrun." She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze wandered across the skyline, past the river's edge to the tower he'd once mentioned building in his 20s. It was lit now, bright and proud, standing taller than the buildings around it. "I've never felt like I belonged in rooms like that," she admitted. "Even tonight, when they smiled and shook my hand, I knew they were wondering where I came from and why I was standing next to you." "Let them wonder," Roman said. "I know why you're here." She turned to him, the wind tugging at the hem of her silk dress. "Do you? You taught me that there's power in being seen. Not for the money or the press or the legacy. Just seen as I really am. That's not something I've had in a long time." He took her glass and set both on a nearby ledge, then reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. When he pulled his hand out, he was holding a small, velvet-wrapped box. Harley stared at it, her breath catching. "You're not about to do what I think you are." "Depends what you think I'm doing," Roman said. "If you're about to propose to me on a rooftop surrounded by fairy lights after 2 weeks of dancing and a week in Italy, I'm not proposing," Roman said quickly, though his voice was warm. "Not yet. But I am asking you something." He opened the box. Inside was a key. "And before you say anything," he added, "I know this is fast. But I've spent years filling houses I never wanted to come home to and rooms that never felt like mine. I don't want that anymore. I want a place that feels like us. Wherever that may be." "You're giving me a key to this place?" she asked carefully. "I'm asking if you'll make it yours too. Move in. Build something here with me. Your art. Your chaos. Your music that you play too loud when you're working. All of it." Harley looked down at the key, then back up at him. "You're not afraid I'll say no?" "I'm terrified," Roman admitted. "But I'd rather be afraid with you than fearless without you." She let out a quiet laugh, then took the key from the box, running her thumb over the grooves. "All right," she said, "but I'm painting one of the walls bright orange." Roman blinked. "Orange. Vibrant. Loud. Unapologetic." His mouth curved. "I deserve that." Harley stepped into his arms, resting her head against his chest. "You do." He held her there, quiet for a moment. Then he whispered, "I don't think I really believed in home until you walked into that studio." She tilted her head up. "I didn't believe in second chances until you offered me a ride." They stayed on the rooftop long after the city quieted, long after the wine glasses went untouched and the lights began to dim. Weeks passed. Harley moved in. Her things didn't fit perfectly at first. Her paint-splattered drop cloths and chaotic sketches clashed with Roman's pristine marble countertops and curated art pieces. But slowly their worlds blended. He cleared out an entire room and gave it to her as a studio, even though it had once been his prized home theater. She painted the wall orange, just like she promised. She started freelancing less and designing more for herself. Roman backed her quietly, never once asking her to put his name on anything. He just showed up to every pop-up show, every gallery invite, every late-night design panic. He, in turn, brought her to meetings not because he needed her there, but because he wanted her voice in the room. She didn't sugarcoat things. She asked questions no one else dared to. And slowly, the empire he'd once been ready to give up began to reshape itself with transparency, with meaning, with her. One morning, Roman left a note on her sketchpad, written in his familiar bold scrawl. "You've made this place feel like more than just mine. You've made it feel like ours." "Dinner on the terrace tonight?" She found him waiting when she stepped outside that evening, candles flickering against the dusk. This time, he didn't pull out a key. He got down on one knee. And when Harley said yes, she didn't hesitate. They married 6 months later in the garden of the villa in Lake Como, surrounded by close friends and the kind of laughter that echoed against the water. Roman wore no tie. Harley wore white sneakers under her dress. They danced barefoot on the lawn, and when the music faded, they kept dancing anyway. There were no secrets left. No misunderstandings. Just them, fully known, completely chosen. And for the first time in both their lives, they weren't building something for the world to see. They were building something for each other. Forever.